My favorite piece of science fiction horror media that I've ever experienced comes from a short story collection book by my favorite horror author who I talk about all the time on this channel. And I know some of you guys are probably sick of it, but I don't care. That guy deserves all the praise, even more glaze, considering he's not one of the most popular authors out there. And this book was absolutely fantastic. Matter of fact, this book is responsible for me becoming a consistent reader of the author because it gave me a full organized glance as to the type of great stuff that he puts out. And that book was called Alien Horrors by Tim Curran. This was the first short story collection of his that I read, and I absolutely loved it. It was fantastic. The best science fiction horror stories you'll ever read. Obviously, it features extraterrestrials, terrifying alien life, creepy planets, and all types of great stuff. And the reason why this is relevant is because there is a brand new book that's coming out by Tim Curran, and it is actually a sequel to Alien Horrors called Alien Horrors 2. Now, this book is the very first sequel to a short story collection he's ever done, so I'm very excited because this is one of my favorite books, and the fact that Alien Horrors 2 is coming out with 13 short stories, 11 of them are going to be brand new, and 2 of them are being republished, but he said himself that the 2 that are being republished, which I have read before, they're going to be highly revised and updated. So we might still get some brand new badass, full fucking awesome scenes in those ones, even outside of what I've already read. So looking forward to that. But that is the brand new book. But the reason why I wanted to make this video today is because if that is the sequel video game that's coming out, there's still some DLC from the first one that I have to cover. And the reason for that is because the first Alien Horrors book I did do an in-depth review of, as you can see right here. Go check that out if you wish. But that one had 12 short stories in it. But there is a hardcover special edition of the book that you can get for around like $23 or $25, which I did get. And this one comes with 3 extra stories in here. 2 of them are republished from more obscure books, other short story collections that were from other authors, and I believe one of them was like a super rare book that he sent out that only like 100 people got. And the other story is basically original. He wrote that other story specifically for this hardcover edition. So I'm going to be talking about that today. So the 3 short stories that we're going to be covering today, diving back into the alien horrors from Tim Curran's mind, is Embryo, Hell Crabs, and The Devil of the Sands. And I know this book is not unaffordable. It's 23 bucks. It's a couple more dollars in the paperback. So if you're going to buy a paperback of this book, I suggest you spend up just a couple more dollars and get the hardcover because you get 3 extra stories. But since most people are not as big Tim Curran fans as I am, although you guys should be, and I will gaslight you into doing so, I'm going to be talking about these 3 extra stories with spoilers in detail because I know not a lot of you guys are going to go pick it up. So might as well just give the full run through of each of the stories so that at least gives you an idea as to, again, the greatness of this dude, the fantastic monsters that he creates, and the fact that he is one of the best, if not high up there, as some of the best science fiction horror writers out there. He has a lot of alien extraterrestrial horror stories, and these collections often bring the best out of him. So let's dive into it. The first story, Embryo, is basically about these space voyagers who are orbiting a planet in their spaceship called Megulon. Megulon is this huge, big black and blue planet filled with methane and hydrogen and all types of poisonous gases. It used to be kind of an Earth-like planet, but for some unknown reasons, it turned into this kind of dead gas giant. And there's a very creepy thing involving Megulon, which involves the main character, our protagonist, who's in the comm system, the communication kind of station of this spaceship. And he has the visual display which shows him the planet in orbit. It also has this device which picks up the sounds and vibrations and magnetic fields that the planet Megulon gives off and translate it to noise. For those of you who don't know, each planet in the universe gives off its own kind of unique sound that could be translated. So in this case, Megulon is very strange because the main character describes that he thinks the planet might be sentient. It might be a living planet, or there's something more to it. It's almost like it's haunted because he feels as though the planet is watching him back through the visual display, that it's listening to him, that it's communicating to him. When the sound device is on and the noises are coming from the planet, he almost feels like he can hear Morse code. It sounds like wind blowing through a haunted house or through deep, Stygian canyons. And yet he feels like at some points it sounds like a heart is palpitating. It sounds like the planet is breathing, respirating at him. And it freaks him out because he thinks that the planet might be targeting him, and he doesn't want to look like he's crazy or delusional to the crew, so he tries to keep a calm mind. And unfortunately, something very bad happens, which is the fact that his suspicions end up getting reinforced as an engineer on the spaceship having lunch with him basically tells him this story about how there was a warship which had landed on the planet Megulon, and they sent out an SOS call. On the SOS call, they were saying that something living on the planet had basically called them down and drawn them down to Megulon. And when people went to go investigate, there was no sign of the ship left. All 50 crewmates had disappeared, and it was very ominous as to what happened to them, especially with that foreboding SOS call. So this puts the main character on edge, and now whenever he goes to the communication room, he keeps having that weird moment of feeling like the planet is watching him. Even when he turns off the sound, even when he faces away from the visual display or actually wants to turn it off, he feels like the planet is still staring at him. And next thing you know, this very seductive, otherworldly voice starts filling his head and basically telling him that he's the chosen one. He's meant for a sacrifice. They want him to come down to the planet, and they plan on killing everybody on the ship and keeping him alive for a very special purpose. And this, of course, freaks him out. He hallucinates a vision where when he's looking at the visual display of the planet, he imagines, or thinks he imagines, that the planet actually opens up like an eyeball. Its iris opens, and this huge, slimy green pupil with this bloodshot eye and tendril-like veins starts staring back at him. And of course, he nearly collapsed. And that night, he ends up having a nightmare. And the nightmare consists of him being stuck on the planet Megulon with no spacesuit. He's being surrounded by vicious storms of that methane, hydrogen gas variety, and he's being hunted by something. And what he's being hunted by is the avatar of the planet. The avatar, the projection of the planet's sentience, takes the form of this giant, misty, writhing form of poisonous gas with all these tendrils and tentacles and this giant sort of translucent egg sac-like eye that's staring at him and hungry to get him. And when he wakes up from his dream, about to get attacked by the thing, he then has another member of the crew basically come up to him and say that the planet is sentient. It is living. It's gonna come and get us. There's nothing we can do. And that lady talks about how she's been having strange visions and strange dreams. And he realizes that the process that this planet was talking about, how it's gonna start targeting everybody on the ship, well, it's slowly starting to unravel and come true. That following night, that same lady who came to talk to him ends up dying a horrific death. The death is described as if she was left on the planet Megulon without a spacesuit. Her eyes basically disintegrate and start popping and burning away. Her lungs are ruptured, and she's completely exploded into a million pieces. Her entrails and organs and intestines all over the place, because it's almost as if she was frozen solid with methane and other gases and then almost hit with a hammer and exploded in that type of fashion. Again, what would happen to you if you were on the planet without a spacesuit? So that begs the question to the main character's mind. Did that thing come on the ship and start attacking her? Or was she teleported to the planet somehow while she was asleep? But without a doubt, something had gotten to her. Eventually, one night, things start going bad. Next thing you know, there's the life alert and all types of sirens and alarms going off. And as he starts investigating, he realizes that the gravity and pressure is depressurizing. It almost feels like the ship has broken open to the outside space, and now it's basically flooded, and everyone's going to die in the vacuum. But when he goes out there in the dark, because all the power is off, and he starts investigating with his spacesuit on now and his flashlight, he starts to see that everybody is dead. Everybody on the ship has died in the same form that the woman did, almost as if they were exposed to the planet Megulon. And then he sees the same avatar from his dreams moving through the ship and communicating to him with that woman's seductive voice. And he realizes that that telepathic voice was coming from the creature. It is terraforming. It is reforming the ship's atmosphere and conditions to better suit itself. And that's when he hops on an escape pod and tries to get out because he realizes that it's too late. And as the escape pod starts to blast away from this ship that's now breached, it then turns around and starts rapidly going back to the planet Megulon, almost as if there's some force that's pulling it back. And he starts to scream, he starts to freak out, he starts to have a mental breakdown, and then he looks at the planet and sees a horrific sight. He sees that the planet is no longer that black and blue gas giant. He sees it turning into the color of red, pinkish flesh, like a giant placenta sac. It's bloodied with all these wiring, large tendrils and stuff that start unfurling out of it, these veins that start running through it, that pink sort of placenta, womb sac like flesh. And it starts stretching. The planet starts going into a more oval shape and that of an amoeba. And when he looks to the center of the planet, he sees a life form. He sees a life form which resembles a fetal spider, a spider fetus with a single cyclops-like eye that's staring back at him and this opening oval leech kind of mouth. And he realizes that this planet was not a planet. It was not even a haunted planet. This was a planet-sized egg sac. And the thing inside of it is an embryo waiting to hatch. Yes, this entire thing is one giant egg sac, one giant placenta. And inside of it is offspring waiting to be born. But offspring pretty much the size of a country because of the fact that it is the planet's core. And that whole planet, again, was basically an incubation chamber for this eldritch, Lovecraftian, beyond powerful kind of entity. And he starts rapidly going through that egg sac and eventually makes his way to the abyss, which is the center of the creature. And that's how the story ends. I give Embryo, again, a 9.5 out of 10. It is a fantastic story. It goes into that whole idea of not just aliens, not just, little green men with lasers that are going after you. No, this is that beyond comprehension type of extraterrestrial threat. A creature which is as powerful as a deity, some Lovecraftian stuff. And the idea that there's absolutely nothing you could possibly do to beat this thing. It is so creepy. The descriptions of Megulon being this sentient force which is watching him through the comms, listening to him, that telepathic seductive voice in his head, the dreams and nightmares he has of this avatar bringing him down on the planet, the way that people die with their eyeballs popping and burning and disintegrating away, their lungs ruptured and then exploding like they've been liquidized, methane and all that type of stuff. It's very, very good. And I love that short story. So the opening one is a banger. The next short story is called Hell Crabs. This one is an original one written just for the hardcover special edition. So it's a brand new story. And this one follows a group of subterranean miners who are on this icy Arctic tundra kind of planet. But once you start digging and going to the subterranean levels, it's moist and it's basically like a mud river. It's these giant, ecosystems of caverns that have these flowing kind of oatmeal consistency river muds where there's creatures inside of there and life forms, mostly worms and those kind of things. So you have people down there basically mining because there are these important minerals and crystals which can make the corporation funding the mining system very, very rich. The people who are leading the crew are your typical sort of blue-collar workmen, but the guy who's leading them is an asshole. He's a dickhead. He's basically that overly macho, demanding kind of guy who doesn't give a damn about their safety, always ragging on them. And as they get down there and start using the drilling drones and train stations and all this different stuff, they eventually eventually break into a cavern system, which was not made by one of their machines. It looks way too smooth. It looks way too strange. As they go down there, the mud river is a lot deeper. It's up to their waist now. And there's these strange sort of fungus pools in the actual muddy river where as soon as bare flesh touches the fungus, it'll start to spread and creep over you. And once you pull it off, you're filled with blisters and stuff. So not a good place you want to be. But unfortunately, they've been experiencing little tremors here and there throughout their mining operation, and now the tremor has kicked up to magnitude 100, and the entire cave starts to collapse. There's rocks falling, they have a giant cave-in, and now they're officially stuck down there in this part of the cavern. And that would be somewhat okay. Obviously, they'd be stranded, and you can't get help. But, of course, as the title says, there's bad stuff down in the muddy rivers. But now when they're down there in this brand new cave system, there is this overpowering smell of bleach that comes. And next thing you know, one of the workers ends up screaming his head off. And when they look at him, they see that the mud that's around him is whirlpooling, spinning in a vortex, almost like he's stuck within a whirlpool. And when he tries to get out of it and pulls his legs up, his legs are gone. They've been cleanly cut off, almost as if they've been amputated. And next thing you know, his arms get cut off and his body parts basically start getting ripped up. And there's these whirring, spinning things in the mud that they're not able to see. And eventually, when more of them start getting targeted and sliced apart and ripped up, and there's waves of mud and more vortexes and whirlpools coming, eventually the main character sees these giant crabs, these giant alien crabs with super smooth skin, huge kind of perfectly oval bodies. They're the same color of the muddy brown sort of river that's there, except that they're of course a lot bigger, and they have a ring of spikes around them. Spikes, bone protrusions, teeth, something there. It's like a ring of spikes that's around it. And these things spin like Beyblades. Yes, they spin like tops, they spin like blenders, they spin like Beyblades, and they're nicknamed buzzsaw crabs or chainsaw crabs because as they spin, they will bisect parts off of the prey. So you'll see these things basically turning on their side while these guys are swimming back in the river, and they'll basically spin like a Beyblade and slice you in half down the torso and then start cutting up your arms and legs and eating of you piece by piece. So yeah, these things are literally spinning buzzsaw crabs. And these guys are getting attacked because there's like a dozen or 2 dozen of them getting absolutely torn apart. And some of the descriptions are like people being thrown into wood mulchers because 5 or 6 of these crabs will start attacking you at once and you'll basically be ripped apart like a wood chipper. Very horrific, very gory. And eventually only a few characters get left. The mean sort of guy who was leading the crew ends up sacrificing one of the guys. And then when the main character has the opportunity to basically find an exit and he gets up there and the other guy is stuck down in the mud, that mean dude who was leading and responsible for all of this, he ends up not saving him. He ends up walking away and leaving him there as payback for all the bad shit he did. And yeah, it's left to your imagination what might have happened to that guy. So this story, I'm going to give a 7.5 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10. I kind of debate. It's a pretty good to good story. It's your typical sort of B-movie monster kind of thing. Very cool villains. Again, Tim Curran is the absolute master of making very cool villains. The idea that you have these giant buzzsaw crabs, the fact that they spin like Beyblades, swimming through this river of mud and basically slicing you apart, cleanly amputating off all your limbs and body parts and breaking you up like a wood chipper. But outside of that, it's a very simple story. Again, just a bunch of subterranean miners down in this cavern. There's a cave-in. They get stuck in with some bad things. This type of stuff has been done before. And I did feel like, although the action was cool, you didn't really get a good description of the actual like monsters itself. Usually Tim Curran goes into great detail about the creature, gives you a lot of different very clean action scenes. You didn't really get as much as you normally do, so I kind of had to pull down a few points for that. I like the setting change. I like the fact that it was featured in a cavern, so it adds some variety to the book as part of this extended edition. And the villains were cool for what you get to see of them. So yeah, That is hell crabs. The Devil of the Sands features space voyagers who are lost on this planet, which is basically a giant ocean of sand. The same way that Earth has oceans, this place has oceans of miles and miles of deep sand. And the sand is like not your typical stuff. It's very thin, very grainy. It's almost liquidy-ish. And it's got these beautiful colors of the sea, like oranges and yellows and magentas and indigos, because there's a bright shining sun which is above them that's basically laying down all this type of colors across the sea of sand. And as these guys are stuck down there and they're sort of navigating all the rocks and sandy oceans, they end up seeing something very strange. They see this giant hulking figure come out of the actual ocean of sand. And it's not a physical life form in the normal sense. It's a little strange. The entity which rises out of the ocean of sand looks like this misty, shrouded Grim Reaper graveyard angel. It's like this huge, very dark, sort of misty, part liquid, part physical type of entity. It looks identical to a Grim Reaper or those kind of figures, and it has no eyes, no notable features, but it's watching them from a distance. And as they're looking at it, they get this very ominous feeling. They don't know if it's malevolent or if it's normal or if it's going to act towards them, but as they look at it, they get the sense that this is something evil, that it has some malicious intents towards them. And this planet used to be populated with towns and advanced cities and life, but for some unknown reason, all those civilizations on the planet ended up getting destroyed, and it was left behind by this thing. And from the atmosphere being similar to Earth atmosphere, the idea of oceans and life and trees and all these things should exist somewhere on the planet, but they haven't found any in sight. And this thing might be responsible for that. So what ends up happening is that they're forced to stay inside of their ship. They don't want to go out because they're afraid of that thing, and they might run out of supplies or materials if they keep wasting and expending energy. So they end up kind of camping out. But one of the guys in the crew named Cortez starts to go crazy. For some unknown reason, he starts becoming more hostile towards the crew. He becomes more standoffish against them, and eventually he starts crashing out. He starts fighting them and throwing them all over the place, and he actually runs out of the ship into this ocean of sand. And when he approaches that graveyard angel type of entity in the distance, that thing starts to approach him. And next thing you know, Cortez has disappeared. The rest of the crew is a little on edge, but they don't want to go searching for him because they have a bad feeling. And one of the ladies on the ship late at night ends up hearing some weird noises outside, and she sees that Cortez is outside of one of the windows. But he's not normal. His skin is super pale, and his eyes are sort of replaced by these giant black glossy orbs. He has no more whites in his eyes or anything. And he is a phantom. He ends up basically almost like smoke, kind of going through the ship with some intangibility, and ends up approaching her. And bad things happen because he ends up latching onto her and attacking her. His body is super hot. She starts to burn. And then like a lamprey, he ends up opening his mouth and swallows her face like a face hugger, and then starts vacuuming all the moisture and blood and everything out of her body, to the point that the next day the other two crew members find her, end up dissecting her, and then seeing that she has this extremely bloated stomach like she's pregnant. And when they open her up to dissect her, they see that there's no more blood in her body. She is just filled up with sand, the same type of beautiful indigo sand like from outside in the planet. And she has no more moisture in her body, no more organs. Even her bones are crumbling apart. And they get a very bad idea because they realize that Cortez was probably responsible for this somehow, some way. And more importantly, that wraith-like Grim Reaper figure outside is probably the mastermind behind all of this. And as they start heading out there into the desert world, they see that Grim Reaper figure, and then the guy up ahead sees Cortez, and Cortez ends up floating down towards him. He ends up trying to shoot him, but just like a ghost, everything goes straight through him like smoke. And then that graveyard angel, Grim Reaper entity, starts drifting across the ocean towards them. And as it does it, they realize that this thing is responsible for the non-stop sandstorm that's been going on the planet. There is this hurricane, 100-mile-per-hour wind type of sandstorms that have been going on this entire time that Cortez went missing. And this thing is producing those winds. It's creating sand tornadoes and stuff all across the ocean. And then it almost like flips a switch and it becomes like a black hole. It becomes a vortex. And all of a sudden the crew members start getting dragged towards it. And the lady cuts the wire. The other guy gets sucked into it. She runs back into the ship. And next thing you know, the three ghosts of her crew members, these sand lamprey kind of ghost things, start floating out and knocking on her ship and trying to get to her. And eventually she ends up taking a knife, cutting open her arm, and she sees that it's already too late because sand starts pouring out of her arm and she falls to the ground, realizing she's about to die any moment right now. And as that happens, the entity from out in the sand basically sinks down below to the bottom of the sandy ocean and waits there because it's a sort of parasitic exterminator guardian figure which has been terraforming the planet and making it inhabitable. And any living form that lands on the planet after it already killed off the native life, it's going to rise back up and do the same thing that it did to the crewmates to them. And that's the end of the story. This I give an 8 out of 10. It was kind of hard for me to judge because the creature was so unique and its mechanisms were so weird that I was like, okay, you know what, this is not what I'm typically used to, but I still liked it. It was unique. I liked the idea of this ghost-like, very powerful figure, the idea that it can create hurricane-force sandstorms and create sand tornadoes and create like a black hole vortex that sucks you in. The idea that anything that touches it, it turns into these very unique sand-based kind of wraith phantom figures that as soon as they touch you, they basically start sucking up all the moisture out of your body and turn you into a ghost as well. All that stuff was pretty cool. And I like the setting of a planet full of this giant sandy ocean with all this indigo, magenta, beautiful sands. It was just a very nice setting. It was a cool villain. I wish we would have gotten a little more explanation as to the thing. It's quite vague why this thing exists. In Embryo, you got an idea as to this Lovecraftian thing incubating in a gigantic egg sac. In Hell Crabs, it's this ecosystem on a planet, this muddy river, so this is the apex predator. Here it was more ambiguous, so I didn't want to give it a higher score. I felt like I wanted more context clues and explanation, but it was still enjoyable and unique. So yeah, 8 out of 10 good. So yeah, that's it for the video. I have officially covered the 3 extended stories added to the hardcover special edition of Alien Horrors. So I have reread all the stories in here. We are good. I'm ready to go for when Alien Horrors 2 drops. And yeah, again, super excited, looking forward to that. And I don't know what else to tell you. I'm going to be the first person to buy it when it comes out. And I'm going to read the fuck out of that shit. And then reread the fuck out of that shit. I'm hoping that the new book is as good as this one, if not better, or at least close to it. So yeah, until next time when I talk about more Tim Curran. But until then, I hope you have a great day. Hope to see you again on the channel. And of course, if you like this type of content, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, comment down below. Deuces.